Well, hello there, my beautiful friends. Today we are going to be discussing the Animal Crossing and Colourpop collaboration, the 5-Star Island Quad. Now, when I first heard that this collaboration was happening, I was so stinking excited I could barely contain myself. But after actually seeing the collection, I feel like there was a little bit left to be desired. So I went ahead and fixed that today with some single shadows that to me represent the Isabelle character very, very well. So if you are interested in seeing these colors, go ahead and keep on watching and let's jump right on in. So before we get started with these single shadows, let's discuss the Colourpop 5-Star Island Quad. Now this bad boy retails for $12, and obviously it's inspired by Animal Crossing New Horizons, the character of Isabelle, which, I mean, I've talked about it a million times on my channel, but I am obsessed with Isabelle, so much so that I have a gigantic Isabelle plush that is a huge pain in the butt, and it's very, very loud with her little bells on her hair, but she's so cute. And I am just a huge, huge fan of her. So when I saw this palette, I knew I had to get it just for the packaging. The packaging is to die for. But the actual palette itself is pretty, don't get me wrong. I think it does a good job at representing Isabelle, but it's just not enough for me. Animal Crossing is just something that's very near and dear to my heart. I'm a huge New Leaf girl. I just played it over and over to death. But I feel like it just could have been so much more grand, if you will. I feel like Animal Crossing deserves that. But the Colourpop 5-Star Island Quad has the shade Isabelle, which is a matte pastel yellow, and I do really feel like this shade is just the perfect representation of Isabelle. It is a really beautiful, smooth, and really buttery metallic yellow. Then we have Island Tune, which is a matte peachy pink. We have Island Designer, a true pink with multi-dimensional glitters, and Resident Rep, a matte sparkle mid-tone rose with gold and hot pink pearl. Now, honestly, I can do without the last two in this palette, and that's why I basically am making this video. I feel like those two just don't really belong here. The pressed glitter is definitely cute, but I'm not really the biggest fan of pressed glitters anymore. I used to be, but I kind of got over that. And I feel like, I don't know, if you're gonna have 4 shades, a pressed glitter is not what I personally want. I'm sure for some people it is, but for me, I would rather have kind of a more cohesive palette. I don't know if that makes any sense, because this color scheme goes together well, but the textures to me are what kind of throws me off. And then Resident Rep, I'm not the biggest fan of that either. I'm never really a fan of matte shadows with sparkles in them. Granted, this shadow in particular has a lot of sparkles, so if you pat this on the lid, you're gonna see those sparkles. But I feel like, you know, if you want sparkles, just go metallic. Or if you want something a little bit more shiny, go with a satin. I'm just not the biggest fan of mattes with sparkles. So while I do really enjoy the color selection here, it's just more so that I just want more out of this. So let's go ahead and jump on into the single shadows that I picked from my collection, which for me really does represent Animal Crossing and Isabelle, and it's just everything I kind of wanted out of an Isabelle themed palette. This first shade here is from Beauty Bar Baby, and this is the shade Wild Side. This is an iridescent pigment that shifts from red, peach, and gold. And to me, this represents Isabelle because it has a very warm, almost yellowy gold kind of base, if you will, and it has these beautiful pink and gold and red shifts in it. It is very smooth, but it does have a lot of shimmers in it. But honestly, I think this is the perfect type of shimmer if you're gonna do something that's really intense, really eye-catching. I feel like I would prefer an iridescent chameleon kind of shade instead of that pressed glitter. I feel like pressed glitters are just not it right now, in my opinion. For me, for my eyeballs, I'm not the biggest fan of them. I would rather reach for a iridescent chameleon shimmery type of shadow that has all sorts of beautiful multicolors in it, but is still smooth looking on the eyes. I think you can see that in the swatch here. Even though there's those beautiful shimmers and it is very, very shimmery and in your face, it's still very smooth looking, which is honestly what I want, because I'm getting old over here and my eyeballs and eyelids are getting old as well. It's very sad, but I digress. This is one of those shadows that when you put it on the skin, when you put it on your eyes, under certain lights, it almost looks like it's not there. It's super almost translucent. I'm a big fan of the iridescent chameleon type of shadows because they really do have more of a sheer translucent base, but then when you turn your eye, you just get this big pop of color, and I think it's just really fun and interesting. You can wear it over top of darker colors to make it really pop, or you can put it on a bare lid to have a very subtle effect while still getting a lot of color. I think this color represents Isabelle really well. If we think about Isabelle, we think about orange and pink and yellow, of course, that adorable yellow hair, and I think this really represents that. So the next shadow I reached for is Clionadh Cosmetics' Ray. Look at this shadow, look at this pan. It is so sad looking, it is so beat up. it's seen better days, but that's a good sign in my opinion. If your makeup doesn't look like it's been through kind of like a war, if you will, I think that it means you're not using your makeup. So if you have makeup that looks a little beat up, it's probably a good thing. I love this color so much. It is such a beautiful translucent base eyeshadow, kind of like Beauty Bar Baby's Wild Side, but the undertones are different. The Ray has a translucent base that reflects red, orange, and gold, but it almost has like a blue kind of shift to it under certain lights. It's really interesting. I wouldn't necessarily say blue, I guess. It's more of kind of like a cool toned pink that almost leans a little bit lilac, but just mixed in with the rest of the warm tones, it's a really interesting reflect. Now, Ray is not nearly as shimmery as Wild Side. Wild Side had those kind of larger particles of shimmers running throughout it, and Ray is strictly smooth. It is the kind of shadow that you can wear on your lids, you can wear it on your brow bone, you can wear it as a highlight. It is just a very smooth and finely milled type of shadow, while still remaining very, very reflective and very duochromatic. It is really beautiful in the pan as well, and obviously I think you can tell just by the color here why I picked it for Isabel. We have that really light pastel kind of yellowy beige shade, and then we have this beautiful warm sunsetty kind of shift happening in it. It is such a unique color, and honestly I think it represents Isabel perfectly. Jumping into the next shade here, we have Clionadh Cosmetics' Sunbeam. Obviously I love Clionadh Cosmetics. We all know this. This is all known facts. This is one of my favorite shadows ever made, hands down, and I don't think I need to explain why. Like, look at that shadow. It is like me packed into an eyeshadow. If I could be an eyeshadow, I would be Clionadh's Sunbeam. I own 2 pans of this because I didn't want to hit pan on one of them and not be able to get it since they're always sold out. But this little pan of pink deliciousness here has a sheer pink base with small, medium glitter particles that shift from pale gold to lime to turquoise. Now, what you're going to see in the pan with this shadow is that it looks mostly kind of like a light baby pink that shifts to a very intense light gold. But once you actually get it on the eyes and actually see the swatch, you can really see those lime green kind of particles running throughout it. And on the actual skin, it definitely looks a little bit more blue as well. So it's a really interesting color. It has a lot of different tones packed into it. And it is just the most fun bubblegum pink with all these different cool undertones. And honestly, it is one of the prettiest multi-chromes I've seen ever, hands down. It is so stunning and so reflective. It does have some kind of glitter particles running throughout it, although honestly I wouldn't really call them glitter particles. I'd call them more larger shimmer particles, kind of like Wild Side from earlier. They're not really chunky, intense glitter particles. It's very finely milled and very smooth, but you can definitely see them on the eyes. But it gives such a beautiful reflect that just hits the light perfectly. It looks so shiny and just eye-catching. It is such a pretty color. I'm just like gushing over it. I am a huge sucker for this type of shade. I love pink to gold type shadows, and the different interesting blue and turquoise and kind of lime green reflects that are happening here just make it that much more interesting. You gain points in my book if you're a makeup brand and you have one of those in your collection. I'll most likely buy it. Next up, we have one of my favorite shades in my entire eyeshadow collection. This is such a unique and beautiful shade. This is from Menagerie Cosmetics, and this is the shade Canary. I love the name as well. Menagerie Cosmetics really just kills it with their whole branding. I think that their entire collection of shadows is beautiful. But this is a yellow gold to pink duochrome with pink shimmers. Now I have a big dip out of mine because I've used this quite a lot, and as you can see, I have a pretty large dip in the left side of the pan. But look at the finger swatch here. You can really see that pink reflect. It's like a bright bubblegummy pink, and the overall undertone of the shadow is very warm, almost like buttery, popcorny type of colored, which sounds kind of gross because you're putting it on your eyes, but it really just does remind me of butter popcorn. But this shadow is so smooth and buttery and intense. You do not have to build this guy up. You don't have to work it onto the lids. It kind of does all the work for you. It's just a very, very smooth, very silky type of shade, and the beautiful pink reflex in there really show in person. It's a little harder to see them on camera, but I'm sure you can still see what I'm talking about. Honestly, I'm trying to think of a brand who's come out with something similar, and I don't think I really know of any other brands that have come out with this exact shade. It's just such a unique type of shadow that just looks like a kind of warm gold on the eyes, but then when you turn your head, you get this really bright pop of pink. It is just very wet looking and dewy and glossy, and I am a huge fan of dewy and glossy metallic or shimmery shadows. That is my jam. I highly suggest this to anybody who's into pinky gold eyeshadows. It's like the typical pink to gold eyeshadow, but just reversed. It's like yellow gold to pink. It's absolutely stunning. But now we're gonna get into some of the mattes here, and the first matte I picked out is from Clionadh Cosmetics. Now this is called Lemon Cream. The name, I die. I think it's so cute. Clionadh has a lot of kind of food named eyeshadows. For some people, maybe they don't like that, but for me, I'm a sucker for that type of marketing and branding, if you will. I think it's so cute. But this is a soft pastel yellow matte. Now it's more of like a soft honey. It's not so pastel that it's gonna wash out people with darker skin. I think that this would work nicely as a transition shade for deeper skin tones if you want to go for a kind of honey colored eye look. I think it would be beautiful, kind of run throughout the crease. And on my particular skin tone, which is very, very pale at the moment, I might add, it is almost like a sunflower yellow. It's really beautiful. It is such a smooth formula and it blends out just effortlessly. Clionadh Cosmetics knows what they're doing with their mattes. Their mattes are just absolutely to die for. And obviously I chose this for Isabel because this is the perfect color to represent her adorable bell bag shaped hair. The next shade I picked for Isabel here is from Emme Cosmetics. Emme Cosmetics is not talked about enough. They're definitely known, but they're just not as known as they should be because their matte formulas are beautiful. Honestly, they're very similar to Sydney Grace's, just very smooth and easy to blend. They don't build up with too much pigment so that you can't go back and blend it out if you mess up. They just build up really nicely on the eyes and blend out very smoothly. But this is the shade Maracuja Mousse. Now, this shadow is literally the color of a honeybee. It is like that typical honeybee yellow, just very, very warm, very kind of almost orangey, if you will. It's really stunning, and I felt like it really represented the undertones that are in Isabel's hair. And I know I mentioned that her hair is supposed to look like a bell bag from Animal Crossing, but her name is literally Isabel, like Isabel. I feel like I learned that like a year ago and was just mind blown. Just mind blown, but I digress. So the next shade I reached for is from Clionadh Cosmetics. This is the shade Caramel Apple, and I believe that this shade is discontinued, unfortunately. So bring back Caramel Apple 2021. But this is a matte burnt pumpkin tone. Now I know this pan looks just atrocious. I'm like cringing just looking at it right now, but it is such a beautiful color. And honestly, I'm at the point in my collection where my eyeshadows no longer look nice and pretty. They're starting to get a little beat up, a lot beat up. So I'm sorry, but a lot of my eyeshadows have just been used a lot. And like I said earlier, that's a good thing, but for on camera, it's not exactly the prettiest of aesthetics, if you will. Super smooth, lighter pumpkin color, but it's not super orangey. It has more of a yellow undertone, so it works just perfectly with the colors we have going on here. And I think this represents Isabel perfectly because it just looks like the complementary color to her fur and her hair. Of course, we're still on the hair because that is a huge factor for Isabel's appearance, and I think it represents her really well. So the next shade we have here is from Klarity Kosmetics. This is the first pink that I've shown you guys, like actual baby pink. Surprising, usually I show you guys mostly baby pinks and that's it. But this is from Klarity Kosmetics, and this is the shade Striptease. This is described as a pale blush pink transition pressed pigment. This is definitely a lot lighter in the pan. Like I'm talking like 3 or 4 shades lighter in the pan than it is on the eyes. And you'll see that in the swatch. It almost deepens the more you build onto it. The more you go back into the shadow and pick some up and put it on your eyeballs, it almost deepens the more you layer it. And I'd say that's a good thing. Maybe for some people, maybe they wouldn't want that because it's a little, I don't want to say deceiving because that sounds bad, but it's a little deceiving in the pan. As you can see, look, I'm applying pressure to it and it changes colors almost. I don't know if it's supposed to be like that, but I think it's really pretty. I like the way it looks in the pan. I like that I can do a really soft wash of light baby pink if I wanted to. And if I want the pink to be deeper, a little bit more almost like deep bubblegummy, I go back into the pan, layer it up one more time and really buff it out, and it deepens. It's like the mystery of the color changing eyeshadow. I don't get why it does it, but I'm not complaining. I like that I'm able to sheer it out or build it up and kind of change the color, if you will. So the next color in the collection here is from Glaminatrix Cosmetics, and this is Sweet Peach. This is described as a matte pinky peach, and like this color is my nails. It just matched perfectly to my nails. I didn't even do that on purpose, but it's just a perfect color match. This is such a beautiful, kind of soft pastel, peachy pink color. It's not super light. It's definitely more mid-toned, and I like that because I feel like more people can use it. You know, if you have a super pastel peach, a lot of people are not going to be able to use that. So this is like a deeper pastel, if you will. It almost has a little bit of coral in it as well, but it's mostly peachy pink, but there's just like a little bit of an orangey undertone as well. Now, I think this color represents Isabelle because it represents her island shirt perfectly. This is like the color of her island shirt. Now, honestly, I'm more of a fan of the Mayor outfit when it comes to Isabelle, and I wanted to include some greens in here, but I didn't want to, you know, have too many different color variations. I wanted everything to still be cohesive. But when I was looking through my collection for colors, this one really stood out to me as representing the island representative t-shirt that she wears. The second to last shade I picked out is from Menagerie Cosmetics yet again, and this is the shade Wisteria. This is a vibrant coral peach matte, and this is such an interesting color. It's almost like Glaminatrix Cosmetics' Sweet Peach, but it has more of a coral, more of a almost electric pink undertone happening there. It's more bright and more neon, but it shears out really nicely on the eyes and it gets a little bit more soft. It is the perfect shadow to complement Sweet Peach. And it's a little bit brighter, a little bit more intense, so I think this would look beautiful throughout the crease, and then with Sweet Peach kind of buffed through the crease as well, just to kind of soften things a little bit. As you can see here, it's definitely a little more intense and almost a little bit deeper. Menagerie Cosmetics has some killer matte formulas. Their formulas are just beautiful just across the board, but their mattes are very pigmented. And they're very forgiving as well, even though, as you can see here, it's very pigmented, like very pigmented, but it blends out really nicely on the eyes too, so you can soften everything up a little bit, which is something I look for in matte shadows because I mess up like left and right on my makeup. I've been doing my makeup for God knows how long and I still make mistakes on the daily. So having something that's more forgiving is necessary. And the very last shade for the palette is called Stay Golden from Colourpop. It's ironic because it's not gold at all. You know, Isabelle has goldenish fur and we have some golden toned mattes in this palette, so I think it works. But this is a matte raspberry. This is from their very first launch of single shadows, like Colourpop's first launch of single shadows years and years ago, and I still have it. That's why it looks absolutely hideous in its pan. This color is just a really kind of softened purple raspberry tone. It's not too purple, it's not too red, it's not too pink. It's like the perfect blend of all three shades, and it's almost a little bit more muted as well, so I think it works really nicely throughout the crease because it's not just like a straight up raspberry fuchsia or a straight up purple plum. It's like a nice mixture, and it really does kind of add a little bit more depth to a softer pink look, which is my favorite type of look. And this is my old favorite, my old go-to for going through the crease when I was doing pink looks. It just adds a little bit of depth without being too much, if that makes sense. Alright my friends, but that's going to be wrapping up today's video. If you are still here watching the video, then thank you so much. I appreciate you sitting through this with me. I feel like I've been talking for like 100 years. But I really wanted to share with you guys my own personal interpretation of an Isabelle and Animal Crossing themed palette. Or if you'd like to see me just do an overall Animal Crossing themed palette, I would love to do that. I have two passions in life, makeup and Animal Crossing, and they just so happened to combine recently. I had been asking for that for years, and finally we got it. But it just wasn't enough for me. I know I'm so spoiled and stubborn, right? But I really think that this collection could have been much bigger and much, I don't know, more creative, if you will. And I hate to say that because I do like the collection, but honestly, I just expect the best when it comes to Animal Crossing. I think that Animal Crossing and Animal Crossing fans deserve a very unique and interesting palette, and I just feel like the quads were cute, don't get me wrong, but they just weren't as unique as I personally would have wanted them to be. So let me know in the comments what you think of the collection of shadows I put together here, if you like the collection of quads that Colourpop came out with, if you like the 5-star island quad, or if you feel kind of similarly to me about the color scheme being cute but not quite original enough for Isabelle, because Isabelle deserves the best, I tell you. But with that being said, if you are not already subscribed and you want to see more content like this, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. And if you enjoyed today's video, I would absolutely love it if you gave me a big old thumbs up. It helps out little teeny tiny YouTubers like me. And if you choose to do so, then thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you. But with that being said, I hope you are having an absolutely amazing and beautiful day wherever you are. And thank you so much for joining me here today. I hope to see you next time. Bye!